Hashtag pay our debt. My daughter demanded on Christmas, but my response made her cry. Hashtag on Christmas Day, my daughter handed me her $400,000 debt. Pay it back by New Year's. I paid it, smiled, and gave them my gift. She screamed in shock. On Christmas morning, my daughter Sarah gave me an envelope with a big smile. Inside was a paper showing her husband Mike owed $400,000. "Mom, you need to help us by New Year's," she said sweetly. I read it carefully, nodded, and told her I had a special gift for them too. When she opened my present, she screamed so loud the neighbors probably heard. You won't believe what I put inside that box. But before we continue, please subscribe to Granny's Voice and tell me in the comments what your favorite holiday is. I was putting away dishes when I heard Sarah's voice coming from the bathroom. The door was open just a crack. "Jessica, this plan is perfect," my daughter said into her phone. I could hear that sneaky laugh she used to do when she was little and stole cookies. "We're giving it to her like it's a chance to help family. Mom can't say no. You know how she always talks about helping people and being there for family." I stopped moving. My hands held a plate in midair. Mike's $400,000 debt. Yeah, all of it. We'll say Mom is helping by signing papers, but really we're making her responsible for paying it back. Mom has great credit and owns her house. The bank will love her because she's reliable and has money saved up. She laughed again. Mom will think she's doing something wonderful. Good old Barbara Thompson, saving her baby girl just like always. The kitchen suddenly felt cold. I had worked 40 years as a teacher and school principal. I knew when kids were lying or trying to trick me. And here was my own daughter, my Sarah, planning to put a huge debt on me and pretend it was a gift. By New Year's, we'll have her signature on everything. Then we can finally relax. Maybe take that trip to Hawaii we've been wanting. We can use her credit card while we're planning it. Her voice got quieter, like she was telling a secret. Honestly, she owes us anyway. We've been staying here for almost 3 years now. That's worth something, right? I put the plate down very slowly. I looked at myself in the hall mirror. Same gray hair pulled back in a bun. Same reading glasses hanging on a chain. Same wrinkles around my eyes from smiling at students for so many years. But something inside me felt different now. Something harder. In the living room, I folded blankets and made everything neat. Sarah came out 20 minutes later with a huge smile. "Mom, I didn't know you were home. Want some hot chocolate?" "That sounds lovely, sweetheart." She moved around the kitchen like she owned it, pulling out the expensive cocoa powder she bought last week. $40 for one container. For someone who said they had no money, she sure knew how to spend. "Mike and I think we should do something really special for Christmas this year. Make it extra memorable." She handed me a cup with whipped cream on top. Her eyes looked so bright and happy. Now I saw it wasn't real happiness. It was planning. "We have a surprise for you, Mom." "A surprise? How thoughtful of you both." She didn't notice my voice sounded flat. Why would she? To her I was just Mom. Boring, helpful Mom who never said no to anything important. "You're going to absolutely love it. It's something really meaningful." I drank the hot chocolate. Tasted good, of course. Everything about how they lived was fancy and good. The question was, who was really paying for all of it? That night I sat in my craft room. That was the one room they never went into. Probably because it didn't have anything fancy to take pictures of for the internet. I pulled out old photo albums. Sarah at age 7, missing her front teeth, laughing at her birthday party 1 week after her father died. Sarah at 12, making funny faces but trying not to smile at my jokes. Sarah at 21, finishing college and hugging me so tight I could hardly breathe. When did that sweet girl disappear? Or was she ever really there? My computer screen glowed in the darkroom. 40 years as a teacher and principal taught me many important things. The most important was this. Watch what people do, not just what they say. Actions tell the truth even when words don't. I opened a notebook and started writing down what I knew. What I had seen but ignored because I wanted to believe in the daughter I raised alone after my husband passed away. The shiny new car Sarah drove. At least $50,000. The expensive purses that showed up every month. Mike's collection of fancy watches sitting on their dresser in the guest room they took over. Restaurant receipts I saw in the trash. $100 for sushi. $200 for steak dinners. All while they said they were struggling and just needed a little more time. 3 years of a little more time. $400,000 in debt. And they wanted me to carry it all. Wrapped up like a present. Like I should be happy to ruin my retirement money. The interesting thing about being a principal is you learn to spot patterns. You can tell when students are lying or trying to cheat. Right now, everything about Sarah and Mike was screaming that something was very wrong. My fingers typed on the keyboard. I had set up our home internet. I knew all the passwords. I'd seen papers they left lying around. Credit card bills in the recycling. I ignored them before because I trusted my daughter. Trust. What a simple word for something so important. By midnight, I had enough information to know that my gut feeling was right. Something was very wrong with their money situation. The debt was real. I found emails from Mike talking about it. Worried messages to someone named Brad about needing more time and finding other ways to fix things. But their claims of being poor. That was all pretend. Like actors in a play. I leaned back in my chair and looked at a photo on my desk. Sarah at 4 years old, dressed as a fairy for Halloween. I had made that costume myself, staying up until 2 in the morning with needle and thread because store costumes weren't good enough for my little girl. She hugged me that morning and said, "Mommy, you're the best in the whole world." That little girl in the photo wouldn't know the woman upstairs now. The woman planning to trick her own mother. But I saw something else in that photo too. I saw myself. The woman I used to be. The woman who gave everything to raise Sarah right. Teaching her to be honest and kind and strong. Time to remember who Barbara Thompson really was. Not just a mom. Not just a retired principal. A professional who spent her whole career catching students and even teachers who tried to cheat the system. If Sarah and Mike wanted to play games with my money, I would show them how real professionals handle these situations. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, memories came flooding back. I remembered the hospital 30 years ago. The doctor putting his hand on my shoulder. His voice was soft when he said the words that broke my world. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. We did everything we could for your husband." Sarah was 7 years old, sitting in the waiting room coloring pictures. She didn't know yet that her daddy was gone. She didn't know our family just fell apart. I remembered walking into that waiting room. Getting down on my knees in front of my baby girl. Watching her little face crumble when she saw my tears and understood. "It's just you and me now, sweetheart. But we're going to be okay. Mommy promises." And we were okay. Kept that promise. I learned how to do everything. Fixed things around the house by watching videos on the internet. Went to every school play. Every parent meeting. Every soccer game. Even when my back hurt from sitting on those hard metal seats. I taught her how to ride a bicycle. How to drive a car. How to save money and spend it wisely. I stayed up with her when boys broke her heart. When homework made her cry. I paid for college without any loans because I worked extra jobs and saved every single penny I could. Just the two of us against the world. When did that stop being enough? I thought back trying to find where things went wrong. Sarah's college graduation. She was so happy and ready to start her life. Her first job at a company that sold things online. It wasn't fancy, but it was good. Then Mike Patterson walked into her life at some business party. Confident. Always talking about his big plans and big dreams. He called himself a business owner. I called him something else in my head, but I kept quiet because Sarah's eyes lit up when she talked about him. The wedding was small. Mike's idea. He said it was more personal and special. I thought it was because he didn't want to spend money. Paid for everything anyway. I even gave them $10,000 as a wedding present. Start your life the right way, I told them. They started something, all right. First came the visit. Just for a couple weeks, Mom, while we find the perfect apartment. Mike's business is at a really important stage right now. We can't waste time looking at apartments. Understood. Young couples need support. 2 weeks turned into months. The guest room filled up with all their stuff. Their toothbrushes appeared in the bathroom. Their food filled my refrigerator. Expensive organic everything. While I had spent 40 years buying the cheap store brand. "We're so close to making it big," Mike would say at breakfast, staring at his phone. "Investors are really interested in my ideas. We just need a little more time." 6 months turned into a year. Sarah stopped talking about finding an apartment. Started talking about my house like she always lived here. Mike's phone calls echoed through the walls. Always promising. Always hopeful. Never actually making any money. I tried to say something once. Just once. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you wanted to help us, Mom. I thought family was important to you. Dad would have understood." That shut me up fast. Because she knew it would. They both knew that talking about her father was the one thing I couldn't argue with. So I swallowed my worries. Watched them settle deeper and deeper into my home. Into my life. Into my daily routines. I told myself it was temporary. Told myself I was being supportive. Told myself that good mothers don't keep track of things like this. But part of my brain kept track anyway. It was automatic. Something I couldn't turn off. 3 years of small things I noticed added up to a big problem. Sarah's shopping bags from fancy stores. She called them work outfits, even though her internet page showed she hadn't worked in 7 months. Mike's expensive coffee machine. $2,000. He said it helped him think better. The weekend trips to different cities. Always staying at nice hotels. Mike explained they were networking. Building business relationships. Building business relationships with whose money, I wondered. I thought about the electric bills I paid. The house taxes. The insurance that covered their expensive things along with mine. The groceries I bought while they sometimes picked up takeout and put it on credit cards that I now suspected were maxed out. The pattern was clear. It had been clear for a long time. I just didn't want to call my daughter a thief. I was too scared of pushing her away like I'd seen other parents do. Turning family gatherings into cold, uncomfortable meetings. I thought I was being generous and kind. Turns out I was being used. The photo albums sat open on my desk. I flipped through them slowly. Sarah's sweet 16 party before her dad got sick. Sarah's high school graduation. Her first day of college, waving from the steps. Every picture showed the same thing. Us against the world. Team Thompson. Somewhere between those photos and now, the team had broken apart. He chose a side. And I wasn't on it anymore. My phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. "Breakfast tomorrow. Want to talk about our Christmas plans." Christmas plans. But the surprise. The meaningful gift. $400,000 of someone else's debt wrapped with a bow and my name on the papers. I typed back. "Sounds wonderful. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to watching the performance," I thought. Looking forward to seeing exactly how they planned to trick me. Because that's what it was now. Performance. Show. My daughter had become an actress. And I'd been her audience for 3 years. Clapping and smiling. Never looking behind the curtain to see what was really happening. But I'd spent 40 years in schools. Caught cheaters. Liars. People who thought they could fool the system. I dealt with parents who tried to manipulate grades and teachers who tried to steal from the school. I testified in court twice about financial problems at schools. Never lost either case. And now Sarah and Mike thought they could trick me in my own house. Using my love for my daughter as a weapon against me. It was almost insulting how simple they thought I was. I opened my computer again. Started a new document. Not a list this time. Plan. If they wanted to give me a gift, I'd accept it politely. Study it carefully. Understand every word and every trick. And then I'd give them a gift in return. Something memorable. Something meaningful. Something that would teach them exactly what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. 40 years of catching people who broke rules taught me one basic truth. They always make mistakes. Always leave clues. Always think the people they're tricking are dumb. Sarah and Mike were about to learn what happens when you underestimate a professional. My daughter wanted to play grown-up games with mommy's money. Fine. But she never asked what kind of situations I'd handled at work. What kind of thinking you need to catch people who spent years perfecting their lies. Time for a family lesson. And the cost was going to be high. The next morning I watched them from my craft room window. Sarah and Mike loading shopping bags into her fancy car. The one they supposedly couldn't afford but somehow kept running. Premium leather seats that cost extra money. I had my laptop set up facing the window. To anyone peeking in, I looked like a grandmother checking email. Really, I was doing research. The kind I used to do when a teacher's expense reports didn't match their actual income. Mike carried 4 bags from the expensive grocery store. All organic food, probably. I checked what they contributed to house expenses last month. $150. My grocery bill for the same time. $700. The numbers didn't make sense. But the real education came from listening when they didn't know I was listening. Did you see her face last night? Sarah's voice floated through the open kitchen window. When I mentioned the surprise, she looked so hopeful. Like a puppy waiting for a treat. Mike laughed. God, I almost felt bad. Almost. He paused. You think she suspects anything? Barbara, please. Mom still writes checks by hand. She probably thinks we're just going through a tough time. I looked at my computer screen. My internet tracking program showed all their devices connected to my Wi-Fi. Every website they visited. Every login. Every careless digital trail they left behind. They thought I was too old to understand technology. Funny thought for a woman who spent the last 10 years of her career catching students cheating using computers. Over the next 4 days, I put together what I privately started calling the Patterson file. Began with the obvious things. Mike's internet profile saying he was the boss of a consulting company. I looked up the business registration. Filed 3 years ago. 0 tax returns filed. 0 income reported. The company only existed on paper. Fake card to show at business parties. Then Sarah's credit cards. She'd been smart about it, I had to admit. 4 cards under her maiden name Thompson. Total amount owed. $89,000. She was always late paying the minimum. Collection letters buried in her email, which she'd carelessly set to print automatically when she first moved in. I pulled one letter from my filing cabinet. A letter from a credit card company dated 5 months ago. Your account is seriously overdue. She'd printed it, crumpled it up, and thrown it in the recycling bin. I'd saved it during one of my cleaning routines. My teacher instincts had told me to keep it. Now it was proof. But the real treasure came from Mike's laptop. He left it open on the kitchen table while he took a shower. Just 12 minutes. That's all I needed. His email told a very interesting story. There was Brad, apparently an old business partner who'd been sending angry messages about the $400,000. You said you'd fix this, Mike. I'm not going to jail because you got greedy. Well, interesting word. Kept looking. Found spreadsheets Mike had made, tracking expenses I recognized. Designer coffee, $3,000 per year. Gym memberships, $3,500. Sarah's hair salon visits she called essential, $5,000. All while claiming poverty. Asking me to cover utilities, insurance, and house taxes. My favorite discovery was the online course. Building Wealth After Losing Everything. 12 weeks. $700. Mike was taking expert advice on how to look poor while hiding money. The irony actually made me laugh out loud. My daughter's husband studying how to fake being broke while living rent-free in my house. Getting ready to dump his debt on me like a bag of garbage on fire. I watched them that evening at dinner. Really watched them with the eyes of an investigator, not a mother. Sarah's performance was perfect. Sighing at her phone. Another rejection email. Finding a job is so hard right now. She'd applied to exactly 4 positions in 5 months. I knew because I'd checked her internet profile. Meanwhile, her picture-sharing account, which she foolishly didn't make private, showed her at a Broadway show last week. Orchestra seats. $250 each. We're trying so hard, Mike added, pushing food around on his plate. But every time we get ahead, something knocks us back down. Something being their refusal to live within their means. But I nodded like I understood. I'm sure something good will happen soon, I said. Actually, Mom, we wanted to talk to you about that. Sarah reached across the table and touched my hand. We've been thinking about Christmas. Remember the surprise I mentioned? Of course. Surprise. Exactly. We've been planning something that could really help all of us. Like a family investment. Family investment. Creative way of saying, we're about to trick you. Sounds interesting, I said, keeping my voice calm and normal. After they went upstairs, I went back to my craft room. Pulled up the file I'd been building. $625,000 in total debt between them. That's what I'd found so far. Mike's $400,000 was just the biggest part. Sarah's credit cards. Mike's personal loans. Car lease he stopped paying. 3 maxed out credit lines. They weren't drowning. They were already at the bottom of the pool, waving frantically at me from underwater, expecting me to jump in and drown with them. But here's what they missed in their careful planning. I wasn't the soft pushover they imagined. Being kind isn't being weak. Being generous isn't being stupid. And 40 years of catching cheaters had taught me exactly how people justify stealing from those who trust them. First rule: they always believe their own lies. Mike genuinely thought he was a businessman, not a failure. Sarah actually believed she deserved this fancy lifestyle. That my money was somehow already hers. Second rule: they always think their target is dumb. They saw a sad widow who would spoil her only daughter. They missed the hunter who'd built a career on spotting patterns and gathering proof. Third rule: they always leave trails. Always. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a list this time. Timeline. Every lie. Every trick. Every false promise over 3 years. Dated. Proven. Cross-check. By the time I finished, the sun was coming up over the trees. My coffee had gone cold. My eyes hurt. But I had something more valuable than sleep. I had the complete picture of their lies. And I was ready to start building my response. Margaret Collins's law office sat in a renovated building downtown. All polished wood and leather chairs that whispered money and power. I'd found her through a former colleague who'd needed a tough divorce attorney. If you want someone who follows the rules but knows every trick, she'd said, Margaret's your champion. Mrs. Thompson. She stood when I entered. Mid-50s. Dark blue suit. Handshake like iron. Your voicemail was mysterious. I need to discuss a theoretical situation. Her eyes narrowed slightly. In her job, theoretical meant definitely real but needing distance. Of course. Please sit. I explained the situation without using names. A daughter and son-in-law living in my home. Growing evidence of financial lies. An upcoming request to co-sign major debt. Margaret listened without interrupting, taking notes in neat handwriting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. How old are you, Mrs. Thompson? 66. Then you need to know something important. Our state has strong laws about financial abuse of elderly people. Anyone over 60 can claim protection under the Elder Abuse and Neglect Act. What you're describing, manipulation to make you take on debt based on lies, that's not just morally wrong. It's potentially criminal. Criminal. Financial exploitation. If they're deliberately lying about their money situation to force you into taking on debt, that's fraud. Add in that you're over 60 and they're living in your home. A prosecutor could build a very strong case. I hadn't thought of that angle. I'd been thinking about property laws. Contract rules. Margaret saw something darker. What would you need? Yes. To prove exploitation. Documentation. Evidence of their real financial state versus what they're claiming. Proof they intended to deceive. The more solid proof, the better. If someone had that evidence, theoretically, what could they do with it? Margaret smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who'd seen people try to hurt others and learn to enjoy watching justice happen. Theoretically, they could protect themselves legally. change estate documents, establish eviction proceedings if necessary. And if they wanted to be really thorough, they could report suspected fraud to the right authorities. The IRS, for instance, takes a very serious view of hidden money during debt negotiations. We talked for another hour. By the time I left, I had a roadmap. Not just for protecting myself. For making sure Sarah and Mike faced real consequences for their choices. 4 days later, I met Diane Parker at a coffee shop across town. My contact at the credit union had recommended her. Best financial investigator I know. If there's hidden money, she'll find it. Diane was younger than I expected. Early 40s. Dressed like she was heading to the gym. Laptop bag covered in stickers from different countries. She ordered coffee strong enough to strip paint. "Your son-in-law sounds like a real piece of work," she said after I'd explained the situation. "Not my son-in-law. My daughter's problem." He grinned. "I like you already. Okay, here's what I can do. 4 days, complete financial workup. I'll need names, birth dates, social security numbers if you have them. Would it be legal for me to give you that information? You're the homeowner. They're living in your house. You have legitimate worry about their financial problems affecting your property. Plus, our state is particular about elder financial exploitation. People in your age group get certain protections." She sipped her coffee. "I'm not saying you should give me the information. I'm saying if you did, I'd know how to use it legally." I slid a folder across the table. Everything she needed, neatly typed. Diane worked quickly. 3 days later, my phone rang. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to sit down for this." I was already in my craft room, door locked. "Go ahead. Your son-in-law is hiding about $152,000 in reachable money. $45,000 in a startup with his buddy Brad's cryptocurrency thing. $30,000 in an offshore account, probably set up when he thought he was going to be a tech billionaire. And here's the interesting part. He sold his share in a sports card business for $65,000 3 months ago. Hasn't declared it anywhere. $65,000. I wrote the number down. While claiming he's broke. Gets better. Your daughter has been opening credit cards under her maiden name. Might be technically legal, but the banks don't know she's married. That affects how they evaluate credit risk. And those cards. She's defaulting strategically. Making minimum payments just enough to avoid lawsuits, but never actually reducing what she owes. How much total between both of them? You were right about the $625 total. But here's what matters. They have the means to cover a big chunk. They're just choosing not to." After she hung up, I sat in my craft room for a long time. Not angry anymore. Past anger. This was something colder. More focused. They weren't desperate people making mistakes. They were con artists running a long game. And their target was the woman who'd raised one of them. Loved her without conditions. Given her every advantage possible. I opened my laptop. Created a new folder. Named it Christmas Gift. Inside, I started writing a detailed analysis of the Patterson family financial situation. Charts showing income versus spending. Graphs comparing claimed poverty against actual purchases. Timeline of lies. Every "we're so broke" conversation matched against credit card statements showing luxury purchases. I worked like I was preparing a presentation for the school board. Because in a way I was. The board just happened to be my daughter and her husband. And the topic was consequences of treating family like a target. Margaret had given me the legal framework. Diane had given me the ammunition. Now I just needed the delivery method. And I knew exactly when. Christmas Eve. When they planned to gift me their debt. All wrapped up with fake tears and manipulated guilt. I'd have a gift for them too. My computer screen glowed in the darkroom. Pulled up one more file. The recording I'd made of Sarah's phone conversation. The one where she'd called me predictable. Where Mike had laughed about me being naive. I listened to it again. Not because it hurt anymore. 'Cause it made things clear. She'd made her choice. Chosen a man who saw her mother as a resource to drain. Chosen comfort over character. Chosen easy lies over hard truths. Fine. Every choice has results. Mine was about to have Christmas wrapping. Diane's final report arrived on December 15th. 43 pages of carefully documented financial fraud. I read it 3 times, making notes in the margins like I was reviewing a school budget. Which in a way I was. Except this time, the answer was going to be a very satisfying, denied. I called Tom Wilson that afternoon. We'd worked together at the school district for 12 years before he'd retired to open his notary business. If anyone could make documents bulletproof, it was Tom. "Barbara Thompson," he said when he picked up. Warmth in his voice. "Haven't heard from you in ages. How's retirement?" "Complicated, Tom. I need your help with something sensitive." "Sensitive how?" "Family matter. Legal documents. Everything needs to be perfect." There was a pause. Tom had been around long enough to read between the lines. "Your daughter. Her and her husband. Can we meet?" We met at his office the next day. I brought everything. Diane's report. Margaret's legal outlines. My own compiled evidence. Spread it across his conference table like a prosecutor presenting a case. Tom whistled low. "They really thought they could pull this on you. They think I'm a soft touch. Grieving widow. Doting mother. All that. Are you?" He looked at me over his reading glasses. "A soft touch. I thought about Sarah at 7 years old, crying in my arms after her father's funeral. Thought about her at 17, hugging me at graduation. Then I thought about her laughing on the phone with Jessica, calling me predictable. Not anymore." Tom nodded slowly. "What do you need?" "Everything Margaret outlined. Eviction notice. Power of attorney revocations. Will amendments. And I want one more thing." I slid a handwritten outline across the table. "A formal financial audit. Professional format. Notarized. The kind banks use when investigating fraud. The Patterson Family Financial Analysis. Complete with charts, graphs, projections of their debt-to-income ratio. Comparison of claimed versus actual spending. I want it to look like what it is. An official investigation." Tom grinned. It was the same grin he'd worn when we'd caught that school treasurer embezzling back in 2009. "You want to bury them in their own paperwork. I want them to see exactly how I see them. Through the lens of 40 years of professional experience." Took 4 days. Margaret prepared the legal documents with surgical precision. Tom notarized everything. His stamp making each page official and unchangeable. I compiled the financial analysis myself. Working late into each night. Finding strange satisfaction in the methodical destruction of their facade. The graphs were especially damning. One showed their claimed income versus actual spending over 3 years. The gap was enormous. Another tracked Sarah's social media posts, tagged at expensive restaurants, luxury stores, spa treatments, against her stated unemployment. A third compared Mike's internet claims of business success against his actual reported income. 0. I added footnotes. Professional. Clinical. Devastating. Under a photo of Sarah's new designer handbag. Estimated retail value $2,200. Date of purchase November 20th, 2024. 3 weeks after claiming, "We can barely afford food." Dark humor. Maybe. But after 3 years of being played for a fool, I'd earned some satisfaction. On December 19th, I bought a gift box. Nothing cheap. Beautiful red cardboard with silver trim. The kind you'd put an expensive present in. Found it at a specialty shop downtown. The woman behind the counter smiled. "Someone special." "Very special," I said. Home, I arranged everything carefully. Diane's report on the bottom. Substantial and official. Margaret's legal documents next. Each with bright yellow tabs marking where signatures would be required. If they were getting signatures. Which they weren't. The eviction notice. The power of attorney revocations. The will amendment establishing a charitable trust that would benefit everyone except my daughter unless she could prove 5 years of financial responsibility. On top, I placed the Patterson family financial analysis. My masterpiece. 43 pages of their lies, cross-referenced and annotated. The cover page looked like something from a corporate boardroom. Comprehensive Financial Investigation. Patterson Family Unit. Prepared by Barbara Thompson, educator and school principal, retired. December 2024. And then, because I couldn't help myself, I added the finishing touches. A toy calculator from the dollar store. Bright pink plastic. The kind you'd give a child learning to count. And a book I'd found at a used bookstore. Money Basics for Kids, published in 1998, with cartoon illustrations of smiling coins and bills. I tucked them on top, wrapped the whole thing in tissue paper, tied it with a silver silk ribbon. Sarah and Mike's gift to me was going to be $400,000 of debt disguised as family duty. My gift to them was going to be the truth, wrapped in irony and sealed with legal consequences. I stored the box in my craft room closet behind old teaching materials where neither of them would think to look. Every time I passed that closet over the next 5 days, I felt a small smile. Not satisfaction yet. That would come later. This was anticipation. The feeling a chess player gets when they see the winning move forming several turns ahead. They thought they knew how this game ended. They thought they'd written the script. Desperate daughter. Loving mother. Inevitable rescue. But they'd forgotten something crucial. They'd forgotten that I'd spent 4 decades studying how people tried to cheat systems. How they justified stealing. How they always underestimated the person they were trying to fool. December 22nd arrived cold and clear. Christmas music played on the radio. The house smelled like Sarah's expensive vanilla candles, purchased, no doubt, with credit she had no intention of paying back. I went to my craft room one last time before dinner. Looked at the photos on my desk. Sarah through the years. Smiling at the camera. Trusting that her mother would always be there to catch her. I'd always believed I was raising her to be independent, strong, capable of standing on her own 2 feet. Turns out I'd accidentally raised someone who thought standing on someone else was easier. Time to correct that lesson. I picked up the gift box, felt its satisfying weight, carried it downstairs and tucked it under the Christmas tree. Hidden behind the larger presents they'd arranged. Probably empty boxes for show. Tonight they were going to ask me to shoulder their burden. And I was going to give them mine. The dinner table looked like something from a magazine. Sarah had outdone herself. Candles. Cloth napkins. The good dishes we usually only used for Thanksgiving. Festive and warm and completely fake. Like a stage set for a play about happy families. Mike carved the roast. I'd paid for that too, I noted. With careful precision. This is nice, he said, smiling at Sarah. Having a real family dinner. Feels like old times. What old times? The ones where they moved in temporarily and never left. But I kept my face neutral. Playing my part. It's lovely, I agreed. Sarah, you've really made everything special. She beamed. Reached across to squeeze my hand. You deserve it, Mom. After everything you've done for us. The irony was thick enough to taste. Everything I'd done for them included providing free housing, paying utilities, covering house taxes, buying groceries they supplemented with luxury items charged to hidden credit cards. For sure, I deserved a nice dinner. We made it through the meal with pleasant small talk. Weather, ports, carefully avoiding any mention of jobs, money, or the future. I watched them exchange glances. Little nods of coordination. They'd rehearsed this. Probably spent hours planning the perfect approach. Finally, as Sarah served coffee, expensive beans naturally, Mike cleared his throat. Barbara, Sarah and I wanted to talk to you about something important. Here we go. We've been thinking a lot about family, Sarah added. Her voice taking on that earnest quality she'd perfected. About what it means to be there for each other. I sipped my coffee. Said nothing. Let them work for it. Things have been rough lately, Mike continued. I won't lie to you. My business plans haven't worked out the way I'd hoped. And the economy has been brutal. The economy. As if external forces were responsible for his string of failures, rather than his own laziness and refusal to get a regular job. We've tried everything. Sarah's eyes were getting watery. Right on schedule. Every possible option. But we've hit a wall. And we're running out of time. What kind of wall? I asked, keeping my tone concerned. Mike reached under his chair, pulled out a leather folder, set it on the table between us like he was presenting a peace treaty. I have some outstanding debts, business loans that are coming due. The creditor is getting aggressive. And if we don't resolve this soon, there could be serious consequences. How serious? Legal action. Possibly liens. It could affect our credit for years. Maybe even impact our ability to rent an apartment or get jobs. Oh, the jobs you don't actually have, I thought. But I nodded gravely. Mom. Sarah's voice cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek. I had to admit she'd practiced. We've been so ashamed. We didn't want to burden you. But you're all we have. You're the only person who's ever really been there for us. How much are we talking about? I asked, even though I knew to the penny. $400,000, Justin said. He had the decency to look down when he said it. It sounds like a lot. But with your house value and credit rating, you could co-sign a consolidation loan. We'd pay it back, obviously. This would just buy us time to get back on our feet. Get back on your feet, I repeated the phrase slowly, tasting each word. How long have you been trying to get on your feet exactly? Mom, please. 3 years living in my house, rent-free, while I covered your expenses. And you accumulated, I paused, letting the silence stretch, $400,000 in debt. Justin's smile faltered. It's more complicated than that. The economy, timing, unexpected setbacks. I'm sure it is complicated. I set down my coffee cup. Sarah, when was the last time you actually applied for a job? Her eyes widened. I've been applying. The market is tough. 4 positions in 5 months. I checked your internet profile. The color drained from her face. Mike jumped in. Barbara, we're not here to be questioned. Or family. We're asking for help. No, I said quietly. You're asking me to take on your debt. To absorb the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. Mom, please. Let me see the paperwork. Mike hesitated, then slid the folder across. Opened it. Loan documents neatly prepared. All they needed was my signature. I scanned the terms. The interest rates. Payment schedule. Professionally done. They'd put real effort into this trap. You've thought of everything, I said. We just need you to sign by New Year's Eve, Sarah said. Hope creeping into her voice. Then we can start fresh. New year. A new beginning. A new beginning. I closed the folder. Pushed it aside. Actually, I had a similar thought about fresh starts. I stood up. Walked to the Christmas tree. Retrieved the red gift box from behind the decorative presents. Carried it back to the table. What's that? Sarah asked. Your surprise. You mentioned wanting to make this Christmas meaningful. Exchange gifts that mattered. I set the box down. I agreed. So I prepared something for both of you. Consider it my response to your proposal. Mike's eyebrows furrowed. But Sarah was already smiling. Maybe thinking I'd folded. That I was presenting my agreement in some sentimental way. Mike reached for the box. Pulling off the ribbon. Inside, nestled in tissue paper. He found the toy calculator first. His hand froze. Face going from confusion to something darker. He lifted it out slowly. Like it might explode. What is this? Keep looking, I said pleasantly. There's more. Sarah pulled out the children's book. Money Basics for Kids. She stared at the cartoon coins on the cover. Color rising in her cheeks. Mom, I don't understand. Keep going. Mike's hands shook slightly as he moved the tissue paper aside. Found the first document. began reading the title aloud, his voice getting quieter with each word. Comprehensive Financial Investigation. Patterson Family Unit. The room went silent except for the Christmas music still playing softly from the living room. Some choir singing about joy to the world. Sarah grabbed the document, scanning the first page. I watched her face cycle through emotions. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, horror. Her hands started trembling. You investigated us. Her voice came out small, broken. I audited you, I corrected. There's a difference. Investigation implies suspicion. Audit means I had evidence and wanted to verify how bad it was. Mike was flipping pages now, seeing his hidden money laid out in neat columns. The offshore account, the startup investment, the undeclared business sale. His face had gone the color of old oatmeal. This is, he started, then stopped. Started again. You can't just. Page 12 is particularly interesting, I said conversationally. That's where I detail your claimed financial struggles against your actual hidden assets. $152,000, give or take. Funny thing to forget about when you're asking your mother-in-law to absorb $400,000 in debt. Sarah was crying now. Real tears, not the performance ones from earlier. You spied on us. Invaded our privacy. I lived in my own house and observed what you carelessly left visible. There's a legal distinction. I gestured to the box. But there's more. The really good stuff is underneath. Mike's hands were trembling now as he pulled out the next layer of documents. The eviction notice sat on top. Official and unchangeable. With Margaret's firm's letterhead making it absolutely legal. Notice of termination of tenancy, he read aloud, his voice cracking. You're kicking us out. 90 days as state law requires. You have until March 21st, 2025 to leave the premises. That's more than fair considering you've been living here rent-free for 3 years. Sarah snatched the paper from him, scanning it frantically. Mom, you can't do this. This is our home. My home, I corrected gently. Which I've generously shared while you accumulated $625,000 in debt and hid $152,000 in assets. Keep reading. There's more. They dug deeper. Found the power of attorney revocations. Sarah had been able to access my medical records. Make certain financial decisions in emergencies. Not anymore. Found the will amendment establishing a charitable trust. Sarah's face went white as she read the conditions. A trust. You're leaving everything to charity. Not quite. Read the fine print. You can access the trust after 5 years of documented financial responsibility. Steady employment. Debt repayment. No hidden accounts. Full transparency. I leaned back in my chair. Basically, you have to become an actual adult. This is insane. Mike was on his feet now, pacing. You can't disinherit your own daughter because we hit a rough patch. Rough patch. I laughed, and it came out sharp and cold. A rough patch is losing a job. A rough patch is unexpected medical bills. What you two have been doing is organized financial fraud while living in my house, eating my food, using my utilities, and planning to saddle me with $400,000 of your debt as a Christmas present. The room went silent except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Sarah's eyes were swimming with tears. Real ones this time. Not the calculated variety from earlier. How did you? When did you? December 9th, I said. I was putting away dishes. Your bathroom door was cracked. I heard you on the phone with Jessica, laughing about the perfect plan. About how your predictable old mom would never say no. How I was basically a checkbook with emotional weaknesses. Her face crumbled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Pulled out my phone. Opened a file. Turned the volume up. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. Crystal clear. We present it as a gift. An opportunity for her to help family. Mom can't say no. You know how she is about responsibility and all that stuff. I let it play. Let them hear Mike's voice. She'll think she's being noble. Good old Barbara Thompson, saving her baby girl just like always. And Sarah again. Honestly, she owes us anyway. 3 years we've been staying here temporarily. That's worth something, right? I stopped the recording. Our state allows recording in private homes with one person's consent. Everything I collected is perfectly legal. Want to hear more? I have 14 separate conversations documenting your plans. Mike sat down heavily. All the color gone from his face. You've been recording us for 2 weeks. 11 days to be precise. Once I knew what you were planning, I made sure I had documentation. Old habit from being a principal. Always get everything documented. Or in this case, recorded. Sarah was openly sobbing now. Mommy, please. I know we made mistakes, but... Mistakes. I opened the financial analysis. Flipped to a specific page. This is a mistake. I pointed to a line item. 1 bank fee because you weren't paying attention. This, I gestured to the entire document, is a pattern. 3 years of deliberate lies, strategic debt building, and planned exploitation. We were going to pay you back, Mike tried. But even he didn't sound convinced. With what money? Your hidden 152. The money you've been carefully hiding while crying poverty. I pulled out another section of Diane's report. Your offshore account in the Cayman Islands. $30,000. Your investment in Brad's cryptocurrency startup. $45,000. The $65,000 you got from selling your share of Sports Card Empire 3 months ago. Where is that money, Mike? He couldn't answer. Just stared at the papers like they might catch fire and save him. You see, that's the thing about being a school principal for 40 years. You learn to spot patterns. Hidden money. Strategic failure claims. Attempts to manipulate family members into assuming debt. I've seen it all. Investigated it all. Testified about it in hearings twice. I met his eyes. I never lost a case. This isn't a court case, Sarah whispered. Not yet, I agreed. But there's one more document in the box you haven't found yet. Bottom right corner. Mike's hand shook as he pulled it out. Notice of suspected financial fraud to the Internal Revenue Service. He read aloud. You reported us to the IRS. I reported unreported income, hidden assets, and potential tax evasion. They'll investigate. And if they find what Diane found, and they will because they're very thorough, you'll face audits, penalties, possibly criminal charges. Pause. Though I suppose you could use that financial course you've been taking. Building Wealth After Losing Everything. Ironic title given the circumstances. Sarah looked up sharply. You knew about that too. I know everything. Every purchase. Every lie. Every calculated manipulation. That's what I've been doing for 11 days. While you two practiced your Christmas sob story, I was building a case. I gestured to the box. And there it is. 43 pages of your choices. Results included. The clock on the mantel chimed 8. Christmas music still played faintly from the living room. Peace on earth. Goodwill to all. Except nothing was peaceful in this dining room. Nothing was good in their futures. Mike stood up. Hands balled into fists. You can't do this. You're destroying your own daughter over money. No, I said quietly. You're destroying yourselves. I'm just documenting it and making sure I don't go down with you. Sarah looked at me. Mascara running. Voice broken. What happened to you? When did you become so cruel? Thought about that. Really considered it. December 9th, I said finally. The moment I heard my daughter laugh about manipulating me. The moment I realized you weren't asking for help. You were running a con on your own mother in her own house. I stood up. Began gathering the documents. I raised you better than this, Sarah. Your father would be heartbroken. It was a low blow. I knew it. But it was also true. Get out, Sarah said. Voice full of venom. If you hate us so much, get out. This is my house, I reminded her. But don't worry. You have 90 days to find a place. I suggest you use some of that hidden 152 to secure a deposit. I left them sitting there, surrounded by the ruins of their plan, holding their Christmas gift of consequences. In my craft room, I poured myself a small glass of wine. My hands were steady. My conscience was clear. They'd wanted to give me their burden. I'd given them the truth. Fair trade. The next morning, Christmas Eve day, I woke to raised voices downstairs. I took my time getting ready, brushing my teeth, making coffee. Let them plan. Let them scheme. I'd already anticipated every move they might make. When I came down, they were waiting in the kitchen. Sarah's eyes were red but determined. Mike looked like he hadn't slept. Jaw tight with anger he was trying to hide. "We need to talk," Sarah said. "All right." She took a breath, shifted tactics. This was the approach I'd expected first. Emotional manipulation. "Mom, I know last night was intense, but I need you to understand something. Everything we did, every choice we made, it wasn't about hurting you. We were desperate. Desperate people don't buy $2,000 handbags. That was before. 3 weeks ago, Sarah. Your social media shows it. Date stamp and everything." She flinched, regrouped. "Fine. We made mistakes. But you raised me, Mom. You know me. I'm not a bad person. Neither is Mike. We just got in over our heads. And instead of coming to me honestly, you decided to trick me into co-signing debt while hiding assets. That's not desperation. That's fraud." "That's a harsh word," Mike said. He'd found his voice again, and it had an edge. "And it's one you might want to reconsider using." "Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check. You investigated us. Fine. But you did it by accessing our private computers, our emails, our accounts without permission. That's illegal search. We could sue you for invasion of privacy." I sipped my coffee. "You could try. State law is pretty clear about homeowner rights regarding devices connected to their network. You signed an acceptable use policy when you set up your laptops here 3 years ago. Remember? It was part of my insurance requirement. I hadn't required any such thing. But they'd been too careless to remember what they'd signed. Plus, anything left in common areas of the house is fair game. You left documents on the kitchen counter, in the printer, in the recycling bin." Mike's jaw worked. He wasn't used to people being more prepared than him. "Even if that's true," he pressed, "you can't just report us to the IRS based on guesses. That's harassment. Malicious prosecution. I reported suspected tax fraud based on documented evidence gathered by a licensed financial investigator. The IRS will make their own determination. If you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about." I set down my coffee cup. "But we both know that's not the case." Sarah tried again, voice cracking. "What about family, Mom? What about forgiveness? All those years you raised me. All those lessons about love and loyalty. Were they meaningless?" "Not meaningless. Just apparently wasted on you." Hurt to say. But it was true. I taught you about responsibility, honesty, earning what you have. You learned something else entirely. From who? She was getting angry now. Defensive. From you. You're the one who taught me that money solves everything. Every problem I had growing up, you threw money at it. Dance lessons. College. My wedding. I gave you opportunities, I corrected. I never taught you to steal. And that's what you were trying to do. Steal my financial stability. My retirement security. My home equity. You just wanted to call it helping family so you could sleep at night. Mike stood abruptly. "You know what? Fine. You want to play hardball. We'll get a lawyer. Challenge the eviction. Challenge the recordings. Challenge everything. Good luck finding one who'll take your case when you can't pay the deposit." His face went red. "We'll figure it out. With your hidden assets. Go ahead. Spend that 152 on legal fees. Watch how fast it disappears. And then the IRS will come asking where you got it. Since you never declared it." Smiled. "Either way, I win." The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. That'll be Margaret Collins, I said. I asked her to stop by this morning. Thought you might try something like this. Margaret entered with her briefcase and professional presence. Good morning, everyone. Barbara mentioned you might have questions about the legal documents. How convenient, Mike sneered. You called your lawyer. I called my attorney, I corrected. There's a difference. Margaret, they're threatening to challenge the eviction and claim my investigation was illegal. Margaret set her briefcase down, pulled out a folder. Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Patterson, let me be very clear. Everything Barbara has done is entirely within state law. The eviction notice provides 90 days, exceeding the minimum requirement. The financial investigation was conducted by a licensed professional using publicly available records and information obtained legally within Barbara's home. The recordings were made in Barbara's private residence under one-party consent laws. What about elder exploitation? Sarah jumped on that. We could claim she's being manipulated, that she's not thinking clearly. You could, Margaret agreed. But elder exploitation laws in our state are designed to protect seniors from financial abuse. Given the documentation Barbara has of your attempts to manipulate her into assuming significant debt while concealing assets, such a claim would backfire spectacularly. In fact, you'd be making the prosecutor's case for them. Mike and Sarah exchanged glances. Their weapons were being turned against them one by one. This isn't over, Mike said, voice low and threatening. No, I agreed. It's not. You have 87 days left. I suggest you start packing. The next few days were fascinating to watch. Christmas passed in cold silence. Sarah and Mike stayed in their room mostly, emerging only for tense, whispered conversations in the kitchen. I kept to my craft room, working, reading, maintaining my routine. On the 25th, I received a call from Margaret. Barbara, you should know. Mike's creditors just contacted me. They received copies of your financial investigation. The ones showing his hidden assets. Did they now? I sipped my coffee. How did that happen? You already know how. Her voice carried approval. They're filing to seize those assets. The offshore account. The crypto investment. Everything. He can't hide anymore. Seems fair. They're owed money after all. That afternoon I heard Mike on the phone in the living room. His voice carried raw with panic. Brad, they know about the crypto fund. They know about everything. No, I don't know how they found out. Yes, Barbara's attorney. We need to move it now before they freeze it. Too late for that. Margaret had already coordinated with the creditors. By the time Mike tried to transfer anything, it would all be locked down. The 26th brought more entertainment. I was in the kitchen making lunch when Sarah burst in. Her phone clutched in her hand, face blotchy from crying. They closed my credit cards. All of them. And my bank is demanding full payment immediately. Which bank? All of them. Every single one. She shoved the phone at me. They're saying I committed fraud by not disclosing my marriage status. But I didn't. I used my maiden name. That's legal. It's legal to use your maiden name, I agreed. It's not legal to deliberately hide your marriage status to manipulate credit decisions. Especially when your husband has $625,000 in debt. Banks consider that important information. You told them. It wasn't a question. You called my banks and told them. Margaret's office sent formal notifications. As part of documenting your financial situation. Banks have a right to know if their risk assessment was based on incomplete information. This is insane. She was shaking now. Phone still thrust at me like a weapon. You're destroying us. Actually destroying us over money. Over $400,000 that you could easily afford. $625,000, I corrected. And it's not about the money, Sarah. It's about you trying to rob me. Your own mother. The woman who raised you. Who sacrificed for you. Who loved you without conditions. I set down my sandwich. You didn't ask for help. You plotted to trap me. There's a difference. Mike appeared in the doorway. We need to talk. All of us. Now. We're talking. No. His face was haggard. Desperate. We need to negotiate. There has to be a way out of this. You can't destroy your own family like this. I'm not destroying anything. I'm removing myself from your destruction. There's a difference. But I followed them to the living room. We sat. Them on the couch. Me in my chair. The same furniture where we'd shared 3 years of meals, conversations, the performance of family. Now it felt like a courtroom. We'll leave, Mike said. Voluntarily. Before the 90 days. We'll go next week. Just call off everything. Tell the IRS you made a mistake. Tell the creditors you were wrong about the assets. But I wasn't wrong. Barbara, please. Sarah's voice cracked. We made mistakes. We were wrong. We admit it. But you're taking this too far. The IRS. Really? We could go to prison. Only if you committed crimes. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You hid income. You concealed assets while claiming poverty. You attempted to defraud me, your banks, your creditors. These are crimes, Sarah. They have consequences. We're your family, she whispered. You stopped being my family when you decided I was an ATM with emotional buttons to push. I leaned forward. Do you want to know the worst part? I would have helped you if you'd come to me honestly. Admitted your mistakes. Asked for help. I would have worked something out. Payment plan. Consolidation. Something. I'm not a monster. Then why are you doing this? Tears streamed down her face. Real ones. Finally. The kind that came from actual pain rather than manipulation. Because you never gave me that chance. You chose lies over honesty. You chose to see me as a target rather than as your mother. You made that choice, Sarah. Not me. I stood up. You have 84 days left. I suggest you start planning your exit. That night, I sat in my craft room and listened to them fight through the walls. Accusations. Blame. Panic. The perfect facade crumbling in real time. Mike's voice. This is your mother. Fix this. Sarah's. How? She has everything documented. Everything. Then we sue her. Emotional distress. Elder abuse. Something. With what money? And Margaret already said that would backfire. Silence. Then breaking glass. Something thrown against a wall. I poured another glass of wine. Watched the city lights through my window. Twinkling in the winter darkness. Margaret was right. This was fascinating to watch. Not satisfying exactly. There was too much loss for satisfaction. Definitely just. My phone buzzed. Text from Margaret. IRS formally opened investigation. They're very interested in the undeclared business sale. Thought you'd want to know. I typed back. Thank you. Another text. This time from Tom. Heard through the grapevine about your situation. Coffee sometime. Want to make sure you're okay. I'm fine, I replied. Coffee sounds good. January. You got it. Downstairs, the fighting continued. But up here in my craft room, surrounded by 40 years of career achievements and memories of a daughter who no longer existed, I felt something unexpected. Not happiness. Not triumph. Just peace. Justice had a bitter taste. But it was still justice. New Year's Eve arrived cold and bright. Sarah and Mike had barely spoken to me in 5 days. They'd found an apartment across town. Cheaper neighborhood. Much smaller space. I'd overheard Mike on the phone negotiating with his friend Brad to crash there temporarily. Until things cooled down. Things weren't going to cool down. But I didn't tell them that. I spent the morning in my craft room while they packed. Boxes appeared in the hallway. Furniture got marked with tape. Their expensive belongings suddenly looked cheap in daylight. All flash. No substance. Like their entire lives. Around noon, Sarah knocked on my door. Come in. She stood in the doorway. Not entering. Her eyes were red but dry. She'd run out of tears, apparently. We're leaving today. Mike found someone with a truck. Before the 31st. That's earlier than I expected. We can't stay here anymore. Not with. She gestured vaguely. Everything. I understand. Do you? Her voice hardened. Do you understand that you've destroyed us? That we're going to lose everything because you couldn't forgive one mistake? It wasn't one mistake, Sarah. It was 3 years of calculated lies ending in attempted fraud. Kept my voice level. And you're not losing everything. You're losing access to my money. There's a difference. What about the will? The trust? Still in place. 5 years of documented financial responsibility. Steady employment. Debt repayment. Then you can access it. 5 years. She laughed bitterly. You know that's impossible. Is it? Get a job. Make a budget. Pay your debts. Millions of people do it every day. We're not millions of people. We're your family. Were. I met her eyes. Past tense. She flinched like I'd slapped her. But maybe it would finally sink in. I'll never forgive you for this, she said quietly. I can live with that. Can you live with what you tried to do to me? No answer. She turned and left. 2 hours later, I stood at my craft room window, watching them load boxes into a rental truck. Mike moved with angry efficiency, throwing things rather than placing them. Sarah worked slowly, mechanically, like a robot with dying batteries. She looked up once, saw me in the window. Eyes met. I didn't wave, didn't smile. Just held her gaze until she looked away. Then they were done. The truck loaded. Mike climbed into the driver's seat. Sarah walked toward the house one last time. I thought she might come to the door, might try one final appeal. Instead, she just stood on the walkway, looking at the house. Her home for 3 years. The place she'd taken over, exploited, taken for granted. I went downstairs, opened the front door. Sarah. I turned. Hope flickered in her eyes. You wanted to play adult financial games. Pause. I showed you how it's done professionally. The only difference is I played honestly. The hope died. Her face went blank. Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Sarah. She walked to the truck, climbed in. They drove away. I stood on the porch watching until the truck disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside, locked the door, and walked through the suddenly empty house. Their bedroom looked ransacked. Drawers open. Trash on the floor. A broken picture frame in the corner. I'd have to clean all this. Repaint. Remove the ghost. In the living room, their gift still sat on the coffee table. The loan documents. $400,000 of debt they tried to hang around my neck. Picked up the papers. Carried them to my craft room. Fed them into the shredder page by page. Watched the strips fall into the bin. That night I called Tom. Hey, Barbara. How'd it go? They're gone. Left this afternoon. How are you feeling? I considered that. Lighter. Better. But lighter. That's normal. You did the right thing. Did I? I looked around my empty house. Sometimes I wonder. Don't. I've seen the documentation. They were robbing you blind, Barbara. You just refused to be robbed. That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation. Maybe. Definitely. Now listen. Linda and I are having people over tomorrow night. New Year's Day. Come by. You shouldn't be alone. I'm not sure. Not asking. Telling. 6 o'clock. Bring wine if you want. But mainly just bring yourself. I smiled despite everything. All right. Thank you, Tom. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, pulled out my phone, found the financial analysis I'd created. 43 pages of their lies. Carefully documented. I didn't delete it. Evidence had to be preserved, especially with the IRS investigation ongoing. But I did move it into a folder labeled Closed Cases. Because that's what this was now. Closed case. The investigation complete. The verdict delivered. The sentence carried out. My phone buzzed. Email from Margaret. IRS agent called. They're very impressed with your documentation. Said it's the most thorough civilian financial analysis they've seen. Investigation proceeding on multiple fronts. FYI, they may want to interview you formally. We'll keep you posted. Also, you did good, Barbara. Really good. Proud to know you. I typed back. Thank you for everything. At midnight, I stood at my window, watching fireworks over the lake. The city celebrated. Strangers cheering the new year. Fresh starts. New beginnings. All that hopeful nonsense. But maybe they had a point. I was 66 years old. Retired. Alone. But also free. Financially secure. No parasites. No manipulation. No performance of family where none existed. My phone buzzed again. Linda says bring your appetite. She's making her famous pot roast. See you tomorrow. Smiled. Typed. Looking forward to it. Below me, the city glittered in the winter darkness. Somewhere out there, Sarah and Mike were learning what consequences felt like. What accountability meant. What it cost to betray the people who loved you. I hope they learned the lesson. I really did. But whether they did or not, it wasn't my problem anymore. I'd raised my daughter to be independent, strong, capable. Time to see if any of those lessons actually stuck. As for me, life after 66 was just beginning. And this time I was choosing who got to be part of it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video. Subscribe to Granny's Voice. And share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.